If you walk out that door, don't come back. She screamed it like a curse, like a spell that would freeze me in place. I didn't answer. I zipped the bag, folded my button down like it was any other Sunday. One sock was inside out, and for a second I thought about fixing it. Then I didn't. I left it like that. Petty? Maybe. But after 17 years of swallowing venom served hot and smiling for the neighbors, I figured I earned one uneven sock. I walked to the front door, still quiet, her voice rising behind me like steam from a cracked pipe. You're pathetic. Who's going to want a worn-out man with no backbone? It always came down to that. Power, and whatever inch of it she thought she still had. I opened the door. She went dead silent for a beat. I stepped out. Click. I closed it behind me. Let me tell you something most men won't say out loud. Sometimes the loudest thing you can do is leave in silence. Not with a scream, not with broken plates, not with fists on the wall, just absence, clean, cold. I didn't slam the door. That would have meant she got a reaction. The lobby of the hotel was gray and forgettable, just like I needed. The kind of place where businessmen come to die a little Monday through Thursday. My suitcase squeaked on the tile, one wheel dragging like it had arthritis. The receptionist handed me a key without looking up. Breakfast cold by 9, Wi-Fi codes in the folder. Perfect. Room 409 had a kitchenette, a recliner that was 2 decades overdue for retirement, and a window facing the loading dock. I made a cup of stale coffee from a foil pouch, sat on the stiff mattress, and stared at the ceiling like it owed me answers. I waited for the dread, the guilt, the instinct to call her, apologize, smooth it over. It never came. I slept 8 full hours, no tossing, no pacing, no wondering whether the front door lock had been turned twice, whether the gas stove was leaking again because she forgot it on low after heating up her almond milk. I didn't even dream. The next morning I pulled up an email from 6 weeks ago, sent at 3:23 a.m., time-stamped, read receipt verified. The lawyer's reply was still there. Whenever you're ready to file, Mr. Holloway, everything's in place. I walked down to the business center in my hoodie and slippers, printed out the packet. The laser printer groaned with every page, spitting out 17 years of quiet endurance in clean Helvetica. Then I did something stupid. I smiled. Not big. Just enough that the guy sitting next to me, mid-30s, sales shirt, Bluetooth earpiece still blinking, looked over like I'd just read a joke. But I wasn't reading anything. I was remembering the way she used to laugh when I forgot things, the way she rolled her eyes at my hobbies, my cooking, my clothes, the accidental snide comments during dinner parties. Oh, he's still tinkering with that little project, she'd say to her friends, glass of wine swishing in her hand like a prop. Keeps him busy. Busy, my ass. Busy was me being the only one who paid property taxes on time. Busy was driving her mother to her dermatologist when Helen couldn't deal with traffic. Busy was unclogging the sink, replacing the garage door opener, reprogramming the thermostat she kept punching like it was an elevator button that would make her life go faster. But now, I was busy doing something else, reclaiming oxygen. She still hadn't called. I hadn't blocked her. I didn't need to. She wasn't going to call. Not yet. She'd assume I was sulking, taking my little break. Maybe even expected a bouquet on the porch tomorrow. A grovel. A soft knock with my spine in my hands, begging for entry. What she didn't know, what she never cared to see, was that I'd been preparing this exit for a while. Not in anger, not in haste, but with precision. The way you'd prep a home for sale, knowing you'll never live in it again. Quietly moving valuables into storage, collecting copies of documents, noticing what name was on the utilities, the deed, the HOA records, tracing the old checking account she forgot we had. And still, I knew this would all seem sudden to her, because she never believed I could leave. That's the kind of person Helen was, the kind who steps on something for so long she forgets it has a pulse. If you've made it this far and you're still listening, do me one favor, subscribe. Over 97% of folks just listen and move on, but every click helps us keep doing what we do. It doesn't cost a thing, but it fuels the team behind these stories. Thanks for that. Back to the story. I didn't leave a note. I didn't take my wedding band. It was still in the top drawer of the bathroom, tucked behind a bottle of expired NyQuil. Let her find it. Or not. I watched the sunrise that morning over a city that never looked particularly kind to me. It didn't look kind now either, but at least it didn't mock me. I didn't know exactly what came next, but I did know this. I wasn't walking away from something. I was walking towards something else, something quiet, something unshared, and maybe, just maybe, something mine. The first time I heard her say it, it was almost funny. I was walking past the kitchen to grab my keys when Helen, swirling a $40 bottle of something French, chuckled mid-sentence and said, "He's not going anywhere. He wouldn't survive a week without me." I paused behind the hallway arch, just out of view. The table erupted in laughter. Her friends, women I'd driven to airports, fixed fence posts for, helped move apartments, nodded like they'd just been told a harmless joke. One of them even added, "But at least he's loyal, like an old dog." Another sip, another smirk, another piece of me filed away. I didn't storm in. I didn't clear my throat to let them know I was standing there, 2 feet from their little roast session. I just stepped back, grabbed my keys, and drove to the grocery store like I'd planned. Bought milk, eggs, and a new external hard drive. That night, while she was asleep, I pulled out a dusty file box from the hall closet and started a new folder. Extraction plan, real name, all caps. Just to remind myself this wasn't about revenge, it was about logistics. I pulled our bank statements from the past 12 months and highlighted every deposit made by me, salary, freelance gigs, tax refunds. Then I highlighted her withdrawals. Beauty salons, expensive dinners labeled girls' night, clothing boutiques I couldn't pronounce. Not a single one under $200. We had a joint checking and a savings account under both our names, but there was also an old account I'd never closed after we got married. I used it once a year to keep it active. Nothing fancy, just enough to not raise eyebrows. That night I moved my direct deposit over. Quiet, clean, no alerts triggered. The next morning she kissed me on the cheek and said, "You forgot to take out the trash." "Right," I said. "I'll handle it." She went back to her phone, probably texting her sister, or one of those friends from wine night, the ones who smiled too wide when I entered the room and never met my eyes. Trash taken out, documents gathered, voice memos started. I'd never thought I'd record my wife, but then again, I never thought I'd become invisible to her. It wasn't just the mockery, it was the precision of it. The way she timed her criticisms between social events as if saving them like party favors. The way she'd interrupt me at dinners to correct my stories, then apologize on my behalf for being a bit off lately. She knew how to smile while sinking the knife in, so I started cataloging, not every insult, just the ones that mattered. January 14th. I'm not your maid. Stop acting like I owe you civility. February 2nd. Don't bring that pathetic tone in here. You're not at work now. March 5th. If you had any ambition, we wouldn't be in this tax bracket. Each recording was labeled by date and phrase. No dramatic pauses, no yelling back from me, just a calm, flat tone in response, followed by the click of the stop button. It became routine. She'd unload, I'd absorb, then I'd document, like a war medic patching himself up for the next blast. There was one night, mid-June, thunderstorm outside, where she walked past me in the hallway, stopped, looked me up and down, and said, "Do you ever think about how replaceable you are? Honestly?" I smiled then, just a flicker, enough that she noticed. "What's so funny?" she snapped. "Nothing," I said, "just remembering something from work." She rolled her eyes and muttered, "Yeah, your very important job." I said nothing. She didn't know I'd met with a lawyer the week before, or that the mortgage, technically, hadn't been under her name since last fall. She didn't check things like that. She assumed, always had, assumed I was soft, assumed I was stuck, assumed I'd never make a move unless she approved the first step. But the thing about being mocked for so long is, eventually, the echo starts to sound like planning, and I had plans. The folder grew, printed pay stubs, screen-capped texts, a copy of her last joke in the family group chat. He's still stuck in his little man cave like a teenager. At least he's not in the way. Even her brother replied, "Damn, Helen. I screenshotted that one twice. There's a difference between being patient and being passive. I'd waited 17 years, not out of weakness, but because I wanted it clean. She wanted to keep performing? Fine. I'd stay in the audience a little longer, but I wasn't clapping anymore." Friday morning, Helen was a flurry of perfume, sarcasm, and credit card swipes. I watched her from the hallway as she threw a weekend bag together like a movie star preparing for exile. 5 outfits for 2 days, designer toiletries in a velvet pouch, and her emergency wine tote. Her sister's SUV honked from the driveway, and she shouted over her shoulder, "Try not to burn the house down while I'm gone." I didn't respond, just raised my coffee cup in a silent toast. She blew a kiss toward the hallway, nowhere near my direction, and slammed the door. I waited until the taillights disappeared around the corner before walking upstairs and opening the bedroom closet. The hangers looked different when you knew they were staying behind. She'd left like she always did, loud, flippant, untouchable. Her version of affection had become a checklist of derision. Don't miss me too much. Try not to get lost without me. Bet you'll love having the house to yourself. You and your sad little hobbies. Her Instagram stories started rolling in before they even hit the highway. First, a boomerang of the mimosa toast. Caption, "Sisters escape. He'll live." An hour later, brunch selfies on a patio, her chin tilted high, glass of wine in hand. The comment section filled with "Queen. Get it. He better appreciate you." She didn't tag me. She never did anymore. Then came the pool photos. Helen in a new two-piece I'd never seen, lounging like someone auditioning for a life she thought she deserved. "Freedom looks good," she wrote under one post. Later that night, in the group chat with her sisters and two childhood friends, she texted, "Guarantee he'll be groveling when I get back. He always folds. Men like him don't leave. They circle." A screenshot of that message made its way into my extraction plan folder right beneath a scanned copy of the new property deed. Saturday, I moved out the final items: my tools, the leather chair she hated, my great-uncle's watch, and a hard drive containing 17 years' worth of financial backups, tax records, and insurance policies. I left the wedding album, not out of sentiment, but because it didn't belong to me anymore. Sunday night, I dropped off the spare keys, didn't even step fully inside. The scent of her lilac candles still hung in the air like a fake smile. I placed the keys folded inside a takeout napkin, centered perfectly on the kitchen counter, the same spot she used to leave grocery lists she never followed. I didn't leave a note. She didn't deserve a monologue, and then I was gone. She got back Monday morning, her hair still curled from the weekend, lips chapped from too much poolside Prosecco. The garage door clicked open, but there was no familiar shuffle of me inside making coffee or folding laundry, just silence. At first, she didn't think much of it, probably assumed I was on a grocery run or still asleep. She walked into the kitchen, dropped her sunglasses on the counter, and stopped. The folded napkin. The house was clean, too clean. No shoes at the door, no laptop on the table, no faint hum of the bathroom fan I always forgot to switch off. She called my name once, lightly, the kind of half-hearted "Thomas" that made it sound like I was a dog who might come if bribed. Nothing. She walked upstairs, opened the bedroom door. Her suitcase from the weekend sat on the floor, untouched. My side of the closet, empty. Not messy, not packed in a rush, just not there. She opened the bathroom drawer. The wedding band was still behind the NyQuil. That almost gave her comfort, until she realized everything else that mattered was missing. Back downstairs, she checked the fridge, full of her vegan leftovers and dairy-free creamer, untouched. She turned and stared at the keys on the napkin like they were evidence in a crime scene, because they were. She texted me, "Are you okay?" Then, "This isn't funny." Then, "Where are you?" No response. She started pacing, opened drawers, checked the garage, even pulled back the shower curtain like I might be hiding behind it. Confusion crept in. Not panic yet, just the kind of unease you feel when you realize the script changed and no one told you. She called her sister. "I just got home," she said, voice still casual, trying to hold the upper hand. "The house feels weird." "Did he leave a mess?" her sister asked. "No, it's spotless." A pause. "That is weird." She didn't tell her about the keys yet. She walked to the dining room and pulled open the drawer with the paperwork, the one I used to keep organized. Empty, not scattered, missing. Her fingers trembled slightly when she tried calling again, straight to voicemail. She poured a glass of wine, sat down, opened Instagram again. The comments were still rolling in from her pool photos. "Wish I had your life." She stared at the screen and whispered, almost to herself, "Yeah, me too." Tuesday, 10:13 a.m. Helen was still in her robe, hair wet from a too-long shower when her phone buzzed. "Jessica, saw your house on Zillow. That's a joke, right?" She blinked, thought maybe it was a wrong thread. She hadn't posted anything. "Zillow?" Another text came in immediately. "Jessica, it's listed for rent, same photos, same address, says available immediately. What is going on?" Helen clicked the link. There it was, her front porch, her hydrangeas, her damn decorative wreath, staring back at her on a public listing like she was just some woman Googling a place to crash for the weekend. Photos taken recently, the same throw pillows she'd arranged last week still visible on the living room couch. The bedroom, stripped down to neutral colors, no sign of their life, no photos, no clutter, like someone had erased them from the space, frame by frame. She froze, refreshed the page, twice. Her chest tightened. She switched over to her email. There, unread and marked urgent in bold, was a message from Everlight Property Group. Subject: confirmation walkthrough scheduled Monday at 11 a.m. She opened it. Body: Dear Mr. Holloway, confirming the walkthrough appointment for Monday at 11 a.m. to finalize keys handoff and final property inspection for the new tenant. Thank you for the access coordination. Looking forward to closing. Helen dropped her phone. The words didn't register at first. Then her eyes flicked back over the name, Mr. Holloway. The email wasn't even addressed to her. She was CC'd as a secondary. She felt heat rising from her chest, blooming in her neck. Confusion wasn't just confusion anymore. It was alarm. She scrambled, picked up the phone, and dialed Thomas. Straight to voicemail. No ringing, just the recorded tone. His voice was still on the greeting, calm and quiet. You've reached Thomas. Leave a message. Beep. Thomas, what the hell is this? She snapped. The house is on Zillow? Are you seriously trying to rent out the house without telling me, without even asking? I swear if this is some kind of sick stunt, call me back. She hung up, immediately dialed again. Voicemail. She opened her phone contacts and tapped through to their mortgage broker. Still under his name, always had been. She'd never cared to switch it. It's too much hassle, she'd said once, wine in hand. Besides, what would you even do without me handling the real stuff? Turns out, she didn't handle much of anything. The line rang, voicemail again. She tried the real estate agent listed on the Zillow post, Anita Klein. A cheerful voice answered. Everlight Property, Anita speaking. Helen snapped. Why is my house on Zillow? Excuse me? This address, the listing on your site. I live there. Anita paused. Are you Mrs. Holloway? Yes. I'm sorry, but the paperwork we've received lists Mr. Holloway as the sole authorized party. I'm not permitted to discuss this without his approval. Helen laughed, sharp and humorless. I'm his wife. I understand, ma'am, but unless your name appears on the authorization forms, I'm afraid I can't. Helen hung up mid-sentence. Her hands were shaking now, really shaking. She spilled coffee down her robe but didn't notice. She opened the hallway closet. Gone. The drawer with the passports? Empty. She stumbled into the bedroom and yanked open the jewelry drawer. Her jewelry was still there, but the insurance appraisal documents? Gone. She walked in circles, reached for her phone again. Voicemail. She texted this time. You're not getting away with this. Call me back now. No dots. No reply. She texted her sister. Did Thomas say anything to you? Her sister replied within seconds. About what? Helen hesitated. Then, the house. He's trying to rent it out, behind my back. Her sister waited a full 2 minutes before replying. What did you do? Helen blinked. What did I do? She hissed it out loud to an empty room. That was the moment it hit her. Not in full, not yet, but like a cold breeze from an open window. This wasn't an impulsive tantrum. He was gone, not pouting, not brooding, gone, and worse, he was organized. The digital footprint was spotless. His email was locked. Their shared calendar was suddenly missing appointments. Her name was off the utility bills. She pulled up their joint savings account on her laptop. Password rejected. She tried again. Denied. Forgot password? She clicked. This account no longer supports shared login access. Contact primary account holder. The cursor blinked on screen like it was smirking. She didn't scream. Not yet. Instead, she sat on the kitchen stool, shaking, wine glass trembling in her hand, staring at the folded napkin where the keys had once been. The only thing louder than the silence in that house was the realization that he hadn't paused for her at all. The teller had the kind of voice that's trained not to react, no matter what gets thrown across the counter. Helen wasn't throwing anything, yet, but her tone was already bleeding sarcasm by the second sentence. I need to withdraw $5,000 from our joint savings, she said, slipping her ID under the glass like a queen presenting tribute. Her nails were perfect, freshly done, little shells of composure painted in glossy nude. The teller clicked, scrolled, paused. Helen tapped the counter lightly. Everything okay? The woman glanced up, then back at the screen. I'm sorry, Mrs. Holloway, but this account was modified recently. It's restricted. Helen leaned in, smile still polite but tightened. Meaning what exactly? Meaning you're no longer listed as an authorized user, as of the 6th. Helen blinked. That's impossible. It's our account. My name is on it. The teller hesitated again, clearly weighing how much trouble this conversation was going to cause. The record shows sole authority now belongs to Mr. Holloway. The change was processed in branch. We have a notarized form on file. The 6th. Helen's mouth went dry. The 6th was Tuesday 2 weeks ago, the night she'd come home half drunk from her friend's birthday dinner, seen him watching a documentary about trees, of all things, and laughed in his face. She'd told him he was boring, called him a parasite with no spine. It wasn't the first time, but apparently it was the last time it went unnoticed. She pressed her palms against the counter. You need to reverse that. It's a mistake. I'm sorry, the teller said. You'll need to speak with Mr. Holloway directly or provide a court order. We're legally bound. Helen stepped back, heart pounding. You've got to be kidding. She turned, heels echoing across the tile, and stormed out of the branch. Inside her car, she sat staring at the steering wheel, breathing through her teeth. Then she opened her banking app, fingers suddenly clumsy. Savings account, no access checking account, deactivated credit card, pending cancellation. She clicked through to the notifications panel. One line stood out like a bruise. Joint account status changed. Authorized user access revoked by primary holder. Document received in branch, signed, processed. Her phone buzzed. Bank alert. Monthly mortgage payment successfully processed via Evergreen Holding LLC. Evergreen? What the hell was Evergreen? She Googled it. A shell LLC. Registered 2 years ago. She opened the property tax portal, typed in their address. Owner, Evergreen Holding LLC. It wasn't their house anymore. It wasn't her account. It wasn't his tantrum. It was his strategy, and she'd never seen it coming. Helen's fingers shook as she tried calling him again. Still voicemail. She didn't bother leaving a message this time. What would she say? I didn't mean it? Come back? I didn't know you were capable of moving without my permission? She dialed their old financial advisor, straight to a voicemail that had been updated. This number is no longer in use. Please contact via the client portal. The client portal, and she wasn't a client anymore. Her mind raced backward. She remembered sitting at dinner with him a few months ago, half listening as he mentioned shifting some savings into short-term holdings. She'd waved it off. Something dull, something beneath her. She'd always dismissed his career, low profile, remote, some operations manager role at a logistics firm. What did that even mean? Apparently it meant enough to learn how to disappear without making noise. She opened the group chat with her friends and typed, "Do any of you know a good lawyer?" No response. She scrolled back a few messages. Just a week ago, she'd sent a screenshot of a meme mocking emotionally unavailable men with the caption, 17 years and this still hits. The only one who liked it was her hairdresser. Even her own sister hadn't replied to her message about the house being listed. Helen sat in her car, trying to steady her breath, and stared across the parking lot at nothing in particular. The world looked the same. The sun was still out. Birds still squawked overhead like idiots. But underneath it all, her life had shifted. The house, gone. The money, frozen. The man she called a parasite? Apparently he'd been building a trap door, one she never thought he'd have the spine to open, until now. It started with silence. Not the quiet kind, the deliberate kind. The kind you notice in the group chat when you send a message, and it just sits there. No likes, no emojis, no OMG queen reactions. Helen sent a photo of herself in a new dress that Monday, something soft and floral, paired with a forced caption, taking the week one fierce outfit at a time. Nothing. She double-checked her Wi-Fi, reopened the app, still nothing. She shrugged. Everyone's busy. Tuesday morning, she texted her friend Maya a voice note, a long one. Helen's tone light, trying to sound amused, like this was all just an eccentric blip. He's being dramatic again, she said. Honestly, he probably just wants attention. You know how men get when they feel irrelevant. No reply. That afternoon, she pulled into her usual gym, her sanctuary. The front desk girl, Kylie, looked nervous. Hey, Helen, Kylie said, glancing down at her screen. We actually need to talk about your membership. Helen frowned. What about it? Well, your access was through a corporate package under Holloway Logistics, and it looks like the sponsorship ended last Friday. Helen laughed, a short, sharp sound. It's a mistake. Just put it on my card for now. Kylie hesitated. We'd need a new enrollment form. Technically, since you weren't the primary. I was the wife, Helen snapped. Kylie blinked. Right, of course, it's just company policy. Helen turned on her heel without another word, walking out fast enough to make her heels click like gunshots. As she got into the car, her face flushed, not with anger, but something colder, embarrassment, for the first time in a long time. Back home, she poured a glass of wine, opened Instagram again. Her latest post, a filtered sunset from the cabin trip, had fewer likes than usual, way fewer. Only 6 comments, and one of them was from her cousin, who never liked Thomas. Hope you're okay. This looks peaceful. Helen deleted the post. She scrolled through her followers, noticed names missing, unfollows, silent exits. Then the text came in, from her sister. What did you do to him? Just that. No hello, no how are you, no emoji to cushion it. Helen stared at it like it was written in another language. What did I do to him? She typed, deleted, retyped, finally settled on. He left, that's what he did. No warning, just vanished. Her sister read the message. No reply. Helen threw her phone on the couch and sat down hard. The silence in the house was different now. Not just the absence of him, it was the absence of anyone. Every room echoed. Even the damn dog didn't seem to trust her. Their spaniel, Tucker, lay by the door where Thomas's boots used to sit, unmoving. She tried to laugh it off later that evening at dinner with a friend, if you could call it that. Only Amanda showed up. They sat at the bar, Helen dressed in something too elegant for the venue, makeup flawless, wine glass in hand like armor. He's having a midlife crisis, she said, smiling too wide. Probably bought a motorcycle, maybe even booked some Zen retreat, who knows? Amanda blinked. Helen, I ran into his lawyer last week. Helen froze. She's good and expensive. So? She's not the kind of lawyer you hire for drama. She's the kind you hire when you've got receipts. Helen's smile faltered. Amanda looked at her glass. You mocked him a lot, you know. I joked. We joked. It was part of our dynamic. Amanda didn't nod, didn't sip, just said, no one was laughing but you. Silence. Helen tossed a 50 on the table and left before dessert. In the parking lot, her hands shook on the steering wheel. She opened her phone, texted a friend she hadn't spoken to in months. Hey, can I vent? No reply. Another name, another text, another silence. She tried calling her old coworker, Lila, straight to voicemail. She checked Facebook because that's what desperate people do, and saw she'd been unfriended by 2 people from Thomas's side of the family. The ones who used to smile politely at holidays, who once sent her birthday cards with check-ins about her blog and vacation photos. Gone. Her carefully curated image, smart, stylish, sharp-witted Helen, was cracking. And beneath it, no sympathy, no backup, no audience, because even the best performers need applause to stay on stage. And the clapping had stopped. Thursday morning, Helen was halfway through slicing an avocado when the doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, not after the string of ghosted calls and texts, not after Amanda's awkward exit, not after 3 days of radio silence from the people who used to flood her with weekend invites and heart emojis. She wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door to find a man in a gray polo and baseball cap holding a clipboard and a heavy envelope. Mrs. Holloway? She instinctively straightened. Yes? Signature, please. He handed her the clipboard. What's this? He didn't answer. Didn't need to. The envelope had legal courier services printed in stiff black lettering, and her stomach dropped before the pen even hit the paper. She signed, took the envelope, closed the door slowly. Back in the kitchen, the avocado had browned slightly at the edges. She ignored it, carried the envelope to the dining table, sat down. She didn't open it right away. She stared at her reflection in the glass vase centerpiece, trying to steady her hands. Her manicure, still pristine, contrasted with the raw, chewed skin around her thumbnail. Then, slowly, she tore the envelope open. The first page was simple. Dissolution of marriage. Petition for divorce filed by Thomas Holloway, represented by Darla M. Shu, ESQ. She flipped to the next page, and the next. Her breath started to shorten around page 4. There were logs, paragraphs, time-stamped breakdowns. March 5th, 7:47 p.m., verbal insult recorded. You're pathetic. You'd die without me. April 12th, 6:13 p.m. Recorded. You're a dead weight I'm ashamed to be seen with. Each quote had a file number. There were screenshots, account records, payment logs showing that every major expense had come from his accounts, his LLC, not hers. There was even an affidavit from a neighbor attesting to repeated disturbances involving raised voices from the female resident. Helen's throat tightened. She skipped ahead, frantically now. Appendix C, Asset Division. It was as cold and clean as a guillotine. The house, owned by Evergreen Holding LLC, Thomas's entity, already under transfer agreement. The joint accounts, emptied, legally, methodically. The investments, separate accounts from day one, never commingled. She reached the section labeled Dependent Companions and blinked. Tucker, dog 7 spaniel, Custody assigned to petitioner Mr. Holloway, citing history of care and ownership documentation. Attached, veterinary receipts under Holloway Logistics corporate account. She actually laughed at that. The dog too? It wasn't funny. She stared at the page until her eyes burned, then turned to the final pages. Notice of intent to enforce filing and request for mediation waiver. Translation: he didn't want to talk. He wanted out. And he didn't just want out. He had planned every step, signed every form, attached every receipt, annotated every insult. She wasn't looking at a petition. She was looking at a blueprint, a complete schematic of a man's quiet escape from 17 years of performance, humiliation, and erasure. It was only now, that she realized she'd spent so long viewing him as a background prop that she never noticed he'd built an exit. Not with rage, with paper, with audio, with truth. She leaned back in the chair, hand over her mouth. The avocado still sat on the counter, oxidizing into gray-green mush. She looked down at the stack of pages again, feeling something unfamiliar wrap itself around her spine. It wasn't guilt. It was fear. Because men like Thomas, men who swallow humiliation for years without saying a word, they don't file unless they're already gone. Not emotionally, legally, logistically, strategically. She'd thought he'd wait. She always believed he'd flinch first, bend, waver, miss her. But the pages told another story. He hadn't just left. He'd won, quietly, completely, irrevocably. And there wasn't a single sentence she could throw that would undo what had already been documented, certified, and sealed. She flipped to the final sheet. A post-it was stuck to the last page. 3 words, in his handwriting. No rehearsal this time. I want to hit back, Helen said, crossing her legs too sharply and letting the heel of her stiletto snap against the tile. Across from her, Gerald Whitman, her lawyer, and an old acquaintance from a charity auction years back, nodded without looking up. He was mid-flip through the filing packet Thomas's team had delivered. His eyes moved like a calculator, cold, quietly impressed. Well, Gerald muttered, finally setting the stack down. He's thorough. Helen smirked. Please. He's thorough the way an accountant is thrilling. This is theater. He's bluffing. I wouldn't be so sure. She leaned forward, voice low, syrupy. Let's remind him who paid the bills, the mortgage, the home upgrades, the pool, the landscaping. Let's talk about how I covered the real expenses while he sat in his little corner managing logistics. I want to file a counterclaim. Marital contributions, emotional distress. Make it messy. Gerald tilted his head. You're certain you were the financial lead? She laughed. Come on, Jerry. I was the adult. He wouldn't know a property tax if it hit him in the face. He scribbled something on his yellow legal pad. All right, we'll pull the records from the mortgage lender. I'll have our paralegal confirm the deed and verify the chain of ownership. Let's give him something to respond to. Helen sat back, satisfied. This was the rhythm she knew. Posture, push, control the narrative. She imagined the look on Thomas's face when the court read her claims. Humiliated, exposed, like all men who think being quiet means being innocent. Except Gerald's paralegal called the next morning with a tone that sounded off. I ran the deed records, the young voice said over speakerphone, and the mortgage statements. It's not what we expected. Helen raised an eyebrow. Gerald muted the call and looked at her. Did you co-sign the mortgage? Helen blinked. We bought the house together. We were married. That's not what I asked. No, she said slowly. His name was on it. I didn't care back then. It was easier with just one signature. I paid the bills, he filed the paperwork. Gerald's expression didn't change. He unmuted the call. Continue. The house is owned by Evergreen Holding LLC. It was transferred 2 years ago via quitclaim deed from Thomas Holloway individually. Transferred to whom? Gerald asked. The paralegal paused. The managing member of Evergreen is listed as one Alan Holloway. That's his brother, right? Helen's stomach turned, but she kept her face flat. So what? Well, the paralegal said, voice careful now, since the LLC owns the house and neither you nor Mr. Holloway are listed as owners directly, it's considered a third-party asset. You can't make a claim against it in the divorce, not unless you can prove fraudulent conveyance, and that would be hard. How hard? 2 years' worth of mortgage payments came from the LLC's account. The utilities are registered under the LLC's corporate umbrella, and Evergreen isn't new. It's filed taxes, paid insurance, legitimate paper trail. Gerald ended the call. Helen stared at him, lips parting. I lived there for 17 years. I decorated that house. I funded everything. I hosted events. The wine fridge was my idea. Gerald nodded almost gently. Unfortunately, the law doesn't award equity for interior design. She didn't speak for several seconds. Then, he hid it in his brother's name? Yes, legally sound, quiet, and smart. Helen stood up too fast, knocking her chair back. This is a bluff. It's all a performance. No, Helen, Gerald said. What you did was performance. He wrote documentation. He built infrastructure. She began pacing. There has to be a way to tear it down. We can challenge the LLC, force discovery, subpoena Allen. We'll get him on perjury. Gerald folded his hands. There's no perjury. There are receipts. 2 years of utilities, taxes, and maintenance bills all paid from Evergreen. You never asked whose name was on them. You just assumed. She froze. Assumed. That word again. She had assumed everything. Ownership, loyalty, passivity. Assumed silence meant submission, that a man who didn't argue was a man who wouldn't act. Gerald cleared his throat, softer now. Do you want to proceed with the counterclaim? I have to advise you. It'll be an expensive and likely losing battle, and any false assertion may give his team cause to pursue legal fees. Helen sat back down, slower this time. I want to think, she said, voice low, almost unfamiliar. Gerald nodded, stood, and left the room to give her privacy. She stared at the blank legal pad in front of her. It was hers now, hers to fill, and for the first time in years, she had nothing to write. Sunday evening, golden hour, that deceptive, warm light that makes even the most brutal endings look like they were meant to be framed. Helen turned into the cul-de-sac slowly, tires crunching against the curbside gravel like her car didn't want to be there either. She was wearing a crisp blouse, full makeup, heels, armor. She'd spent an hour picking the outfit, convincing herself she'd walk through that front door, take control, remind the world whose home it was. Except the driveway was empty. No familiar sedan, no rusting toolbox on the porch, no yellow tennis ball hanging in the garage to signal where to stop. Just a house, still, uninviting. She stepped out, heels clacking too loudly. Everything sounded like it echoed. Her own breath felt amplified, like the house had become a sound chamber built to reflect her back at herself. Then she saw it, the note, taped perfectly in the center of the front door, right above the brass handle. Block letters, typed, no emotion. New tenant signs Monday, please forward mail. That was it. No salutation, no passive-aggressive jab, no venom, just a notification. Like she was the one out of the loop, like she had missed the email. Her breath caught. She stepped forward, instinctively trying the door handle. Locked. She jiggled it harder. Deadbolt. She pulled her phone, checked the email from her lawyer again. No updates. Nothing about this. She rang the doorbell. Twice. Of course, no one answered. Then she walked to the front window, shielding her eyes with one hand and leaning close to the glass. The late sun bounced off the pane, forcing her to adjust. What she saw inside didn't knock the air out of her. It emptied it. The house wasn't just cleaned out. It was staged. Walls painted a soft, neutral beige. No scuff marks. No framed family photos. No side table with the chipped edge she kept promising to replace. No couch. No dog bed. No warmth. Just a pristine rug in the center of the living room and a single pot with a fake plant under the bay window. Probably plastic. She stepped back from the window slowly, palms damp, chest tightening. Thomas hadn't just moved out. He'd wiped it, erased the contours of their life like chalk off a board. Not in fury, in preparation, in finality. She moved to the side of the house. The gate to the backyard was latched. She tried it anyway. Locked. She glanced up. One of the upstairs windows was cracked open slightly, a sign someone had been in recently to air the place out, probably for the walk-through tomorrow. She wanted to scream, bang on the walls, kick the goddamn door in and demand her reality back. How dare he do this? But instead, she just stood there, frozen in the waning light, slowly realizing something colder than anger. There was nothing left to fight for. The house didn't miss her. It didn't even remember her. No one did. The neighbors hadn't waved. No blinds twitched. The whole street felt like it had silently agreed to move on without her. She sat down on the porch step. Not because she expected him to drive up, not because she thought there'd be some dramatic twist where he'd appear, tell her it was a scare tactic, a lesson. She knew better now. She sat because her legs didn't trust her to keep standing. The breeze smelled like clean paint and mulch. She remembered planting tulip bulbs by the fence with Thomas 8 years ago. He'd gotten sunburned, called her the foreman because she kept handing him more without helping. They'd laughed that day, really laughed, but those tulips were gone too, probably uprooted with the rest of the landscaping last week. She hadn't even noticed their absence until now. She stood, knees stiff, and walked slowly back to her car. Before getting in, she looked back one last time. The note on the door flapped once in the breeze, then settled. There was no path back. Not through the door, not through the courts, not through the version of Thomas she thought she had memorized like a boring book. That book had been rewritten, and this version ended without her name on the cover. 3 weeks passed. No lawyers called, no hearings scheduled, no pressurized emails from Thomas's side demanding settlements or mediation. Just silence, like the legal system itself had agreed. It was already over. Helen lived in a condo now, leased, beige, 2 bedrooms stacked atop a pharmacy. The kind of place that smelled like paint primer and quiet resignation. She hadn't told anyone the full story, not the girls, not her family, not even her therapist. Not because she was hiding something, but because the story sounded unexplainable, hollow. 17 years, and he just vanished? No, he didn't vanish. He prepared, and she didn't see it because she was too busy narrating her own script. Even Tucker had stopped barking when the neighbors came by. He laid on the couch now like a retiree who'd seen too much war and couldn't be bothered to care anymore. Helen had tried once, just once, to call Thomas again. It rang, but no voicemail this time, just the cold, digital click of disconnection. Then, a Thursday afternoon, the envelope came. No return address, just her name, handwritten. She didn't open it right away. She left it on the kitchen counter for hours, made tea, folded towels, checked Instagram, then deleted the app mid-scroll. When she finally opened it, she was sitting in her car outside the post office. The day had clouded over, sky pale and indecisive, fitting. Inside was a single item, a photograph, their wedding day. Him in a rented tux, smiling like someone who hadn't learned yet to stay quiet. Her in a satin dress that cost more than her current rent, laughing mid-turn, hair tangled in wind. It wasn't a staged photo. It had been taken by his uncle, off-center and a little blurred. On the back, in his handwriting, one line, "I waited longer than I should have." No signature, no date, no demand, just that. Her fingers tightened around the edges, knuckles whitening. For a moment she thought she might crumple it, but she didn't. She just stared at it. And then, slowly, her eyes dropped to the lower corner of the photo where the frame had accidentally captured her father's expression, softly proud, blurred but present. That man had passed 2 years ago. That version of herself had died long before that. Helen sat there, frozen in the driver's seat, photograph trembling slightly in her hand. The engine off, windows fogging, no music. It wasn't until a car parked next to hers that she realized her mouth was open slightly, that she had been waiting. For what? She couldn't say. Somehow, she had believed that even after the filing, even after the empty house, even after the bank account froze and the friends fell silent, some part of Thomas would still need her to understand, to chase, to grasp at closure. But this wasn't closure. This was erasure, clean, surgical. She had spent years talking while he listened, years believing silence meant surrender, that eye rolls beat restraint, that monologues won wars. But the last word belonged to him, and he only needed 8 of them. She tucked the photo back into the envelope, sat for a few more minutes, then started the car, not to chase him, not to find him, just to move. He hadn't bluffed, he hadn't snapped, he'd escaped. And Helen, draped in designer clothes, wrapped in confidence, gilded in sarcasm, had never seen it coming, because she never once asked herself the only question that mattered: what happens when the quiet one stops staying?